Meditations upon a Garden by Richard Flavel. Coffee Break Collection 33, Gardening. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Meditations upon a Garden by Richard Flavel. Meditation 1. Upon the new modelling of a garden. A gentlewoman, who had lately seen a neat and curious garden, returns to her own with a greater dislike of it than ever, resolves to new model the whole plat, and reduce it to a better form. She is now become so curious and neat that not a weed or stone is suffered in it, but all must lie in exquisite order, and whatever ornament she had observed in her neighbours, she is now restless till she sees it in her own. Happy were it, thought I, if, in an holy emulation, every one would thus endeavour to rectify the disorders of their own conversation by the excellent graces they behold in the more heavenly and regular lives of others. Some Christians there are, I wish their number were greater, whose actions lie in such a comely and beautiful order that few of their neighbours can look upon their examples without self-conviction and shame. But few are so happy to be provoked into self-reformation by such rare patterns. I see it is much easier to pull up many weeds out of a garden than one corruption out of the heart, and to procure 100 flowers to adorn a knot than one grace to beautify the soul. It is more natural to corrupt man, to envy, than to imitate the spiritual excellencies of others. Meditation 2. Upon the pulling up of a leek. A white head and a green tail. How well doth this resemble an old wanton lover, whose green youthful lusts are not extinguished, though his white head declares that nature is almost so. Grey hairs should be always matched with grave deportments, and the sins of youth should rather be the griefs than pleasures of old age. It is sad when the sins of the soul, like the diseases of the body, grow stronger as nature grows weaker, and it recalls to my mind that ancient observation of Meander. It is the worst of evils to behold strong youthful lusts to rage in one that's old. It is 1,000 pities that those who have one foot in the grave should live as if the other were in hell, that their lusts should be so lively when their bodies are 3 parts dead. Such sinful practices bring upon them more contempt and shame than their hoary heads, and reverend faces can procure them honour. Grey hairs and aged wrinkles did of old procure more reverence than bags of gold. But alas, how little respect or reverence can the hoary head obtain amongst wise men, except it be found in the way of righteousness. I think the lowest esteem is too much for an old servant of the devil, and the highest honour little enough for an ancient and faithful servant of Christ. Meditation 3. Upon a heedless tread in a curious garden. Passing through the small division of a curious knot, which was richly adorned with rare tulips and other beautiful flowers, I was very careful to shun these flowers, which indeed had no other worth to commend them but their exquisite colour, and unadvisedly trod upon and spoiled an excellent choice herb, which, though it grew obscurely, yet had rare physical virtues in it. When I was made sensible of the involuntary trespass I had committed, I thought I could scarcely make the owner a better compensation than by telling him that herein, though against my will, I did but tread in the footsteps of the greatest part of the world, who are very careful, as I was, to keep their due distance from splendid though worthless gallants, meanwhile trampling upon and crushing under foot the obscure but most precious servants of God in the world. As little do they heed these most excellent persons as I did this precious herb. Summa ingenia in occulto soepe latent, saith Plautus. Rare wits and herbs sometimes do skulk and shrink in such blind holes as one would little think. For my own part, I desire to tread upon no man with the foot of contempt and pride, much less upon any good man, and that I may not, it concerns me to look before I step. I mean to consider before I censure. Had I done so by this rare herb, I had never hurt it. Meditation 4. Upon a withered posy taken up in the way. Finding in my walk a posy of once sweet and fragrant, but now dry and withered flowers, which I supposed to be thrown away by one that had formerly worn it, thus, said I, doth the unfaithful world use its friends, when providence hath blasted and withered them. Whilst they are rich and honourable, they will put them into their bosoms, as the owner of this posy did, whilst it was fresh and fragrant, and as easily throw them away as useless and worthless things, when thus they come to be withered. Such usage as this Petronius long since complained of. Are they in honour? Then we smile like friends, and with their fortunes all our friendship ends. But this loose and deceitful friend stinks so odiously in the very nostrils of nature, that a heathen poet severely taxes and condemns it as most unworthy of a man. 'Tis base to change with fortune and deny a faithful friend because in poverty. And is this indeed the friendship of the world? Doth it thus use them whom it once honoured? Then, Lord, let me never seek its friendship. O let me esteem the smiles and honours of men less, and thy love and favour more. Thy love is indeed unchangeable, being pure, free, and built upon nothing that is mutable. Thou never servest thy friends as the world doth its darlings. Meditation 5. Upon the sudden withering of a rose. Being with my friend in a garden, we gathered each of us a rose. He handled his tenderly, smelled to it but seldom and sparingly. I always kept it to my nose, or squeezed it in my hand, whereby in a very short time it lost both colour and sweetness, but his still remained as sweet and fragrant as if it had been growing upon its own root. These roses, said I, are the true emblems of the best and sweetest creature enjoyments in the world, which, being moderately and cautiously used and enjoyed, may for a long time yield sweetness to the possessor of them. But if once the affection seize too greedily upon them, and squeeze them too hard, they quickly wither in our hands, and we lose the comfort of them, and that either through the soul's surfeiting upon them, or the Lord's righteous and just removal of them, because of the excess of our affections to them. Earthly comforts, like pictures, show best at a due distance. It was therefore a good saying of Homer, Anxi zinodoko, etc. I like him not who at the rate of all his might doth love or hate. It is a point of excellent wisdom to keep the golden bridle of moderation upon all the affections we exercise upon earthly things, and never to slip those reins unless when they move towards God, in whose love there is no danger of excess. Meditation 6. Upon the sudden withering of beautiful flowers. How fresh and orient did these flowers lately appear, when being dashed over with the morning dew they stood in all their pride and glory, breathing out their delicious odours, which perfumed the air round about them, but now are withered and shrivelled up, and have neither any desirable beauty or savour in them. So vain a thing is the admired beauty of creatures, which so captivates the hearts, and exercises a pleasing tyranny over the affections of vain man, yet it is as suddenly blasted as the beauty of a flower. How frail is beauty in how short a time! It fades like roses which have passed their prime, so wrinkled age the fairest face will plough, and cast deep furrows on the smoothest brow. Then where's that lovely tempting face? Alas, yourselves would blush to view it in a glass. If then thou delightest in beauty, O my soul, choose that which is lasting. There is a beauty which never fades, even the beauty of holiness upon the inner man. This abides fresh and orient forever, and sparkles gloriously, when thy face, the seat of natural beauty, is become an abhorrent and loathsome spectacle. Holiness enamels and sprinkles over the face of the soul with a beauty upon which Christ himself is enamoured. Even imperfect holiness on earth is a rose that breathes sweetly in the bud. In heaven it will be full blown, and abide in its prime to all eternity. Meditation 7. Upon the tenderness of some choice flowers. How much care is necessary to preserve the life of some flowers! They must be boxed up in the winter, others must be covered with glasses in their springing up, the finest and richest mould must be sifted about the roots, and assiduously watered, and all this little enough, and sometimes too little to preserve them, whilst other common and worthless flowers grow without any help of ours. Yea, we have no less to do to rid our gardens of them than we have to make the former grow there. Thus stands the case with our hearts in reference to the motions of grace and sin. Holy thoughts of God must be assiduously watered by prayer, earthed up by meditation, and defended by watchfulness, and yet all this is sometimes too little to preserve them alive in our souls. Alas, the heart is a soil that agrees not with them. They are tender things, and a small matter will nip and kill them. To this purpose is the complaint of the divine poet. Who could have thought a joy so coy, to be offended so, and go so suddenly away? Hereafter I had need, take heed, joys among other things have wings, and watch their opportunities of flight, converting in a moment day to night. Herbert. But vain thoughts and unholy suggestions, these spread themselves and root deep in the heart. They naturally agree with the soil, so that it is almost impossible at any time to be rid of them. It is hard to forget what is our sin to remember. Meditation 8. Upon the strange means of preserving the life of vegetables. I observe that plants and herbs are sometimes killed by frosts, and yet without frosts they would neither live nor thrive. They are sometimes drowned with water, and yet without water they cannot subsist. They are refreshed and cheered by the heat of the sun, and yet that sun sometimes kills and scorches them up. Thus lives my soul. Troubles and afflictions seem to kill all its comforts, and yet without these its comforts could not live. The sunblasts of prosperity sometimes refresh me, and yet those sunblasts are the likeliest way to wither me. By what seeming contradictions is this life of my spirit preserved? What a mystery, what a paradox is the life of a Christian! Welcome my health, this sickness makes me well. Medicines adieu. When with diseases I have list to dwell, I'll wish for you. Welcome my strength, this weakness makes me able. Powers adieu. When I am weary grown of standing stable, I'll wish for you. Welcome my wealth, this loss hath gained me more. Riches adieu. When I again grow greedy to be poor, I'll wish for you. Welcome my credit, this disgrace is glory. Honours adieu. When for renown and fame I shall be sorry, I will wish for you. Welcome content, this sorrow is my joy. Pleasures adieu. When I desire such griefs as may annoy, I will wish for you. Health, strength, and riches, credit and content, are spared best sometimes when they are spent. Sickness and weakness, loss, disgrace, and sorrow lend most sometimes when most they seem to borrow. And if by these contrary and improbable ways the Lord preserves our souls in life, no marvel then we find such strange and seemingly contradictory motions of our hearts under the various dealings of God with us, and are still restless in what condition soever he puts us, which restless frame was excellently expressed in that pious epigram of the Reverend Gattaca, made a little before his death. I thirst for thirstiness, I weep for tears. Well pleased I am to be displeased thus. The only thing I fear is want of fears, suspecting I am not suspicious. I cannot choose but live, because I die, and when I am not dead, how glad am I? Yet when I am thus glad for sense of pain, and careful am lest I should careless be, then do I grieve for being glad again, and fear lest carefulness take care for me. Amidst these restless thoughts this rest I find, for those that rest not here, there's rest behind. Jam te tigi portum valete. End of Meditations upon a Garden.